And so it's kind of sparking a lot of conversation, and kind of one of the conversations that, didn't come directly from it, but felt like it had the same conversation that we're going to talk about today, was why sometimes POTA feels so expensive. And really, is it? Because I think a lot of us, we get wrapped up into the gear, the tools, the all of the cool things, because we all have that engineering mindset sometimes, or we have this is an opportunity to organize something in a way that, is fun and exciting. Or, the opposite. Like, we just become like, oh, well, I saw this real cool thing, throw it in my bag. I saw this real cool thing on the internet from a YouTuber, throw that in my bag. And your bag starts to become bloated, and you don't really understand why you're carrying around an 80-pound pack to a picnic bench that's literally 40 feet from your vehicle. And you never use that connector that's, that end connector that you thought you needed, that you left in your bag for that one day that somebody would have an end connector need. Let's talk about the first thing I think we all follow. I'm talking from my experience, because that's where I think I can give you the best bang for the buck. And I'm curious to see where you guys kind of come from with this, and, always interested in seeing a different opinion. But I think the first thing for me was always the upgrade trap that I struggled with, and I got into when I started doing POTA. Although I was a benefit, or had the benefits of POTA being relatively new when I jumped into it, that it was still growing and evolving, that now that we're pretty far into its evolution, that now it just becomes like, well, you don't have to remember to do X or Y because the system doesn't allow it, or it's not been defined, or it's not the Wild Wild West. It's pretty much a well-established program. And so, people don't have those questions any longer that are like, oh, well, how do I handle a threefer? How do I handle, an activation where the gates are closed? All of those kind of questions have already really been answered and run over and over and over again. So the one thing that hasn't is what I call the upgrade trap. And this is kind of one of those things that I find can get you into some really weird places. And I find this maybe more so for folks that are, we'll say, less active operators and more like item collectors. I find for those, I'm curious, those that, may listen, anybody listen to Ham Radio Workbench on the podcast, give me a thumbs up there in the chat if you do. Those guys, they love to build stuff. They're always tinkering. They're always exploring, always building some circuit, building some enhancement, but they use it once and then it goes on the bench and never to be used again. It for me, when I started to see that and hear that, I kind of scoffed at it when I first started, like, oh, well, I'll never be like that. I mean, those are just the electronics guys over in the corner. They'll never do that. But I do that in POTA. Like, I follow this kind of 4-step, self-feeding circle. And they're like, oh, these are great. I love assembling them. And I had one guy, a very good friend. He is the New Hampshire ARL section president, I think is what it is, his title. So anyway, for New Hampshire. Great guy, Dennis, love him. He basically said, he's like, he started to tell me his evolution. I bought the QMX. I bought the QMX1. I bought this. I didn't remember I had the QMX1 already because I thought it was on a waiting list. So I bought another one. So he had like 3 QMXs, all unassembled. And so while he was waiting for his other one to ship in, he assembled them. And I'm like, I turned to him like, Dennis, so you have these 3 units. Have you gone out and used them much? He's like, I kind of bench test them. I made 1 or 2 contacts and then I pushed them off the side and I haven't used them again. And I went, interesting. And I'm like, do you feel like you're just accumulating stuff? Now, Dennis, those that know Dennis is a ham radio collector. So he has, we'll say, hidden, storage units full of old antique radio gear, and that's the like, and has been known to peruse the boneyards of hamfests alike, all in New Hampshire and in the Northeast in general. So he is not that small exception, but he has an accumulation. I mean, it kind of brought me the same attention. It's like, okay, well, I have gear like that. And I have stuff that I bought commercial radios or, pre-assembled kits or kits that I can build myself. And they take up space until, you finally build them and then you play with them for a little bit really quickly, because I think they're important to talk about this. And so my ROI test is pretty simple to follow. And this might help you pare back or decide whether or not the radio, antenna, battery, whatever, you put it in the spot, has it paid you back? And those that know in the business world, ROI is just the return on investment. For those that don't know what that nomenclature means. And that really means is like my investment that I put into it, am I getting anything back from it? And whether or not the amount I get back, is it valuable enough to say that I should keep it or get rid of it? And so I did this. I went through a couple of my QRP kits, and I have 3 of them. And I said, okay, what 6 criteria, can help me use it as a litmus test to confirm whether I need to get rid of this bag, move it on, do something with it, repurpose it, get it back into circulation. And so I looked at it. I said, does this activation bag make things easier? I kind of looked back and found that no, the QRP, I didn't use it enough, so I didn't understand how the functionality always worked on the radio. The microphone gave me a little bit of a problem because of its size and its makeup. Tying it into antennas, I had to have BNC connectors versus regular SO239. I had to run a special, setup for it to be able to work because the batteries don't allow anything go above 12 volts kind of thing, and on and on. And so what I had to do was say, okay, it didn't check that box for me because I struggled with it every time I'd go out with it. A perfect example is the FX4CR. Everybody knows the mic is super hot and has a weird kind of phase to it, and there are workarounds for it. But you have to implement those workarounds, and you have to know of those workarounds before you realize the people after the fifth or sixth time say, I can't sort of hear you. I'm making you barely out. And you're thinking, that doesn't make sense. And you find out, it's the construction of the microphone. So let's move on to the next one. Does it make it more fun? I go out to the field. If I have to bring out my QRP bag with me, I know it's going to take me at least a half an hour, 45 minutes to get set up because I haven't used it. I don't fully trust it. I don't fully know that all of the components that I've laid out in it are going to do exactly what I want, or this time it's going to be one of those things I'm, short a paracord because I can't tie it off. So I have to come up with a creative way, so it adds to the time. And so that fun is fun. I mean, like if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? That's the old adage. I mean, you hear many people say that in the ham radio community. All right. So let's kind of get to the diminishing returns here. We all do this, and this is something that I have shared on several occasions. So you've got the diminishing returns that we all struggle with. We start getting the hobby, we get the $300, the $400 radio, and then we go, well, I really love to see, 100 watts, and or I'd like it smaller. An example here, I'll start with mine. I started with the 450 when I got in the hobby. I wanted to get into POTA. I didn't want to take the 450 with me. It was too big. So my requirement was it's got to be portable. It's got to have 100 watts. Got the 891. So now my budget went from $300 to $700 or $600 roughly, and then a few other accoutrements to go with it. So I'm at the 700 mark. Well, now I'm like, well, I've got the 891, love it, but I'd love to have a waterfall, or I'd love to have, a one cable for being able to do digital modes, or you fill in the blank, and that then moves you to the next bar, which is the $1,500 radio. And you see, other content creators, they'll go out and they'll purchase 9700s for sideband and stuff like that, or they'll purchase all these things to do reviews on and content. But then you're kind of left going, well, should I get that? Should I have this in my arsenal? And I really need it. And then you start doing the whole conversation in the self-feeding circle of like, I do need it. It's got to be the perfect radio. I'm daydreaming, thinking about all that. And then you now get to the next level. It's like, ooh, I really want the dual pan adapters, and I really want X whatever. And so here's my kind of evolution for me that I'll share, because I did this. And I did it because I had the resources, and I know a lot of folks may not have the resources, and know that that's okay, because in essence, the best gear that you have is the gear that you have with you. I started at that 450 and then went to POTA radio. So I had an 891. So the 450 stayed at home. And then I saw the DX10 come out, and I was like, dude, I got to have the DX10. And my buddy bought it. And I'm like, I sat in front of it. And I'm like, oh, definitely got to have the DX10. So I bought the DX10. And then I was like, well, my dad's getting his ticket, so I'm going to buy him a DX10. So I bought him a DX10. So now I have two. And then My DX10 went in a box because my buddy, Todd, he bought a Flex because he wanted the remote capabilities. His job and everything allowed him to play ham radio remotely. I'm like, dude, I want that. I need that. And, see how the cycle is already compounding? I'm getting worse. So now I have a Flex. I have a DX10, which I just last year sold to another ham who was looking for a DX10 for a good price because I wanted it a new home and I'm adapting, around that. And that 450 I gave to a brand new ham too as well for less than what he, was seeing on the market. And he loved it and he still has it and he's still using it. But the problem is you just get to that point that you're at the climax and now I have a 6400 under my desk and I can pull it up anytime I want, but I'm not really pulling it up anymore. I'm using it here and there a little bit. Sometimes I forget I leave FT8 running and making contacts over a 24-hour period and then go, oh my gosh, I forgot I'm online and making contacts, all those silly, stupid little things that happen that you get yourself in trouble with for convenience. And it really is not helping me think of like, well, could I have used that for something else? Could I have used that money for better experiences elsewhere? And I find that the one that helped me break the cycle real quick was, do each of those levels help me increase making contacts in a better way? Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. And more so, it's made me fall into the can't category because I haven't taken the time to upgrade the devices or the components that make up the rest of the antenna to make them better, when I should have just really invested there instead of, accumulating radios. I just say that, guys, as a way to, that's my experience. And what I found out is that my diminishing returns have not paid off in the long haul. So how do we put a bow on this one? There's a couple of ways, but I think one of the things that if you had any takeaway out of this, experiences are what ham radio is about. It's not the gear. It's not about like the biggest shack wins. Buy things that enrich that experience, bottom line. And if you can afford to buy those better radios, then take the time to really be part of learning everything you can out of that to get the best experience you can. And then pass that experience forward. Share it with other people, because then it will be that much more worth it. That radio will be just as valuable as the experiences and the stuff that you do to get there. Because when you take them out, you can rely on it because it's going to create more experiences for other people that are around you that are part of that event. And so with that, guys, thanks again for hanging out with us. It's been awesome. Hopefully this topic kind of resonates with you a little bit, as it's one of those things that I feel like it doesn't get always the limelight it needs to in the ham radio community, although we sort of touch on it a little bit here and there. But it's good to kind of have these conversations and be real and talk like ham radio operators, but talk in a way that, we can enrich each other's lives and be like just, having fun, doing everything we want to do in the hobby and creating those experiences. So yeah, whether you're activating, you're hunting, you're building, you're an experimenter, or you just plan the next trip to the park, I want to say have fun, stay safe, keep exploring. And as always, until next time, guys, keep those radios on, PTT down, and POTA on.